welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week we return to our must-see horror feature, looking at the greatest, or maybe we decide not so greatest, must-see, maybe top 100 films that you should see. And this week we have landed upon Dario Argento's Suspiria.
And I was pretty happy we landed on this one because I only watched it for the first time about 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure how I went so long not watching it because I'm a massive fan of Dario Argento. So I'm not sure how I went so long, but I'm really glad that we are actually talking about it because I watched it and then I messaged you. I've been listening to the soundtrack basically like non-stop since. And yeah, it's just an incredible film.
I've to be honest, I thought I'd seen, but I've not watched an Argento film before.
Really?
I thought I'd had. Was it Deep Red?
Yeah, Deep Red.
Deep Red. I thought I'd actually watched that, but I don't know why. I think I'd seen part of it, but I haven't actually watched the whole film.
Yeah.
So I was completely, and I think I was partially mixing Fulci and Argento up in my head.
I mean, I could kind of see that, to be honest. They're both Italian.
I think they're both Italian. They both have the Giallo kind of influence. They both do, Giallo being the horror thriller kind of slashes, that kind of Italian kind of drama, and also one of part of that that's kind of been linked with that is this famous dubbing kind of that happens within the style where they can use multiple actors of different, but then bring them together to be in one kind of genre. So I think that part's where I've got that from seeing Suspiria. The first thing that did pop into my head actually was that although I've actually enjoyed the Fulci films I've seen, Argento is I do believe is a different level of film. I think he's a better film.
I would agree.
Than Fulci is. Fulci, I would say, is a little bit less, a bit more crass.
Yeah,
I would say a bit more. He's a bit more the down and dirty, the almost reminding me not Troma levels. But he's got a little bit more of that kind of sick, twisted kind of... I'm trying to think of a director who's, within the Western world that's more of the... I guess, I don't know if it's a Robert Rodriguez or Eli Roth kind of a Fulci.
Yeah.
I would put Argento closer to a Spielberg,
I put a Carpenter,
a Carpenter, a Carpenter, or that kind of that level. He's got more of a vision. I would say there was a clear vision, actually, what I would say, auteur. He has a clear kind of his vision, and you can clearly see that. Not that Fulci doesn't have certain things which you can say that's 100% Fulci, but. I do think that Argento, just from seeing this film, I could tell, because I was putting them in the same league as each other, and I would say, now I've seen Suspiria, I'm like, okay, these are very different filmmaking styles. Almost in my head, the only link is the dubbing.
Well, I think they both share some of the same idiosyncrasies that Italian horror films have. So one of the things that you get very common in Italian horror films of this era is that you will get like it can seem as if the music is, say, quite poorly edited, but it's kind of how it is. So there's scenes, for instance, where it will move to one scene and the music will be extremely loud, and Goblins do an incredible soundtrack for this.
Oh, the soundtrack's fantastic.
Yeah, and there's this one particular song which is actually called Witch, and it's the really heavy drumming one, the doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo. And there's moments where that is extremely loud for a character, and then they might go through a door and it suddenly stops.
Yeah.
And then something else might happen and it'll cut back in. So I think that's one of the same idiosyncrasies they have is they won't like a more Hollywood or traditional director.
They don't feel like traditional soundtracks, traditional music. Obviously, this one being such a, almost with the style of the director, then having this quite heavy, rocky kind of soundtrack. is not. It doesn't like gel completely. I do think that this one actually, oddly enough, with the film and the very strong colorization and visuals, I do think that actually, weirdly enough for me, I think the soundtrack actually fits perfectly. Whereas with New York Ripper that we did recently, that soundtrack almost really, it did in a kind of odd cop way, but it just really didn't match. And I've had that the same with the other Zombie 2, you know, where I said the music just, although it's got a weird, in that one it is actually kind of a banger. There's some great ones in there.
There's some bangers, but
it just didn't match. Whereas weirdly with this one, this one almost feels, and the music kind of goes with that, like a pyrotechnic show. Yeah. Where you're going to see laser lights and you're going to see fireworks. And weirdly enough, I feel like this soundtrack perfectly reflects that. It doesn't, at times it might throw you off more because of the human character kind of parts of the film. But when it goes fully into the supernatural parts of the film, the soundtrack fucking works. Amazing.
Incredibly.
And it is great, regardless, it's a great music. And that's definitely a more Carpenter thing in my head that was popping up. That's why Carpenter actually would be a perfect one in my head, because his music is very distinct, and this is distinct for him.
And it's interesting because Goblin, or the Goblins as they're said in this film, they actually made the film before they saw it. They made the music before they saw it. Yeah. So, which is quite interesting. But then Goblin, they do the music for, I think, every Argento film that they've done. They work quite very close together. And then the front man, or the kind of main guy behind it, I think he's Claudio Simonetti, if Goblin didn't do it, then he did it for not just films that Argento did. Argento did a film called Opera, and he did a great score for that. But then he also did it for some films like Demons that Argento didn't necessarily direct, but he produced. He made banging soundtracks for that. But I think that for some reason I just didn't watch this film for a long time. And then a couple of weeks ago, I decided, you know what, I'm going to get stuck into it. I put some headphones on, and this genuinely terrified me in moments. It was a lot bloodier than I expected as well.
Yeah, it's quite gory and graphic at parts.
Argento is known for doing gorier films, like if you like Tenebrae and Opera. But in this one, because it's more supernatural horror, I wasn't expecting it to be anywhere to the level of kind of grossness and actually quite wince-inducing moments of it. I mean, the opening of the film kind of opens with that super creepy, enchanting, Chime-esque music with the weird kind of drum. Yeah. As Susie kind of arrives
on the storm and all of that, in the storm and kind of lightning, and you've got that very opera. It's a very whoa, what's going on? You almost expect it, weirdly enough in the film, you're almost expecting something bigger to happen than her just kind of arriving in the cab. It almost seems like you're ready for some big huge moment to play out kind of thing, like someone's being attacked or chased or straight away, when it's actually just kind of her arrival in this unsettledness, and again just her general being out of her kind of normal, out of her normal waters, and coming from America and feeling out of her place. And I feel like, again, that plays really nicely with this whole kind of, you've arrived in the middle of a storm, and you've arrived in everything, and you're anxious and you're unsure, and all of this is just adding on to it. And the music kind of plays, and we'll come back to it later, but at the end this actually comes around in a very kind of full circle way.
And there's also, this is again going back to what I said about the music cutting in and out. Whenever Susie is looking outside of the door, I'm guessing the airport, we see that music playing, and then it cuts back to her and it's not, and then there, and then also one of the things that's really well done in this film is the colour palette. Argento wanted to do something similar to it was an antiquated technique by then, but similar to what they did with the Wizard of Oz, where it's it's bold colours. It's like a free strip. It's like a free strip colour palette or something like that. And this is the first time.
Yeah, like red screens and blues kind of thing, yeah.
This is the first time we see that red hue outside of the airport. And obviously, like, the film looks incredible and a lot of red is used. That's not like a new thing, you know, that people listening will be like, oh, I didn't notice the red.
But a lot of it you can tell is not just it's not just the added colour palette.
Yeah.
It's the sets have actually been designed to have that colour palette kind of come through. Like, he's made giant rooms where they've added like textures so that the colour can be reflected around the room. And so that everything from white sheets that can then go red when the colour comes and all that kind of thing. Like, all of that, like, I thought the set design and the colour used in this film was just beautiful at times.
Yeah.
But also really added to effect. It's such a bright, colourful film. To be honest, it's something for me that rose this film.
Oh, yeah.
Just the way that it felt so different because of this style that was added. It felt so different than other horrors or supernatural horrors where you have this kind of duller tone. And I know it's something for the remake that was criticised. For the I haven't watched the remake.
No,
I almost considered watching it just because I was like, oh, I am still like intrigued.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch it now.
But I know that it's something that in the remake it goes with much duller tone. It's dull. It doesn't use these bright colours in that way.
It's more muted
because the director felt that that was kind of outplayed and there was nothing new to do with that colour scheme. Which for me, I kind of feel like all horror films nowadays, quite a lot of them look quite dull and muted tones, and I would have embraced a much more. This is kind of why I enjoyed this like more even than I expected, because almost a lot of, for me, is kind of the visuals of this film and the music is what rose this for me above, you know, a lot of others.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the whole of you know, when Susie arrives at the Tanz Academy, you know, this kind of prestigious dance school in the middle of Germany, in like the fucking backwoods. The whole building is red, and later when they go inside, like the inside is blue, but then a lot of the rooms are red. A lot of the characters have red. Whenever there is a supernatural element, there's like a red light or a red hue.
Yeah,
and I think the colours are used incredibly. But another thing that Argento does really well when we're talking about kind of like visually what he does is he often plays with the themes of like duality. It's really heavily featured in Tenebrae, but in this film you often see that locations kind of look as if they're just mirrors of each other. You know, like if, you know, we're kind of like moving through the plot. Susie gets there and then, you know, this student's leaving, and as she kind of runs through the woods and goes to her friend's house, she arrives in there and everything is just, this whole apartment building is just a mirror of these red patterns and, you know, apartments in the same situations. And I was really shocked by kind of just how gory the opening kill was. There's this moment where, where that's when the witch theme first starts playing, when Pat is running through the woods.
Yeah.
The heavy drums and the kind of like almost like tribal kind of chanting in the background.
Well, it's one thing like in that scene that you notice where the camera's extremely like fast, kind of darting as she like, because you kind of go far away and close as she's moving through the woods. And I think that it's something else that's really interesting in this film. The camera work is because you're never still.
No,
the camera
moves
not only have you got the throw of the colours are constantly changing, or the sets almost feel like they're constantly moving in some way. There's either, even when it's just a breeze, you've got the curtains kind of moving in and out.
Yeah.
But that's also because the camera was on the, you know, like dolly system, but it was constantly moving throughout the whole film. So you had this soundtrack that constantly felt like it was rising and falling and rising and falling.
Yeah.
And I think that is what adds really to that unsettled nature. Like in that scene when she's running through the woods, is you as a viewer constantly feel like you're not still or calm.
Yeah,
you constantly feel unnerved, and it's created by the sense of everything. It's camera, color, music, all of your senses. You know, if he could
have,
I was going to say, if he could have, I feel like Argento would have been out of there just being like, right, on your tongue, here's some salt.
Yeah.
Now sugar. Now salt. Now sugar. You know what I mean? Like, he literally would have played with everything he could have. Like, feeling. He would have been like, I'm going to burn you.
Yeah.
Now here's an ice. Here's some ice to cool that down. Now I'm going to burn you again. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's Argento's fault. He just stood behind you just like, it's alright, I'm just cutting your ear off.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to sew it back up. And I've given you some morphine for that.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to cut the part that doesn't have any morphine coming.
Yeah.
And now and that's just like, that is kind of what this film feels like. It feels like constant like unease, constant settle. And and that scene through the woods is good because it darts back between her running in the woods and then you dart back to the
woman in Susie in the taxi. Yeah,
Susie in the taxi. It's and it is that kind of like, holy shit, like what's happening and how does she relate to this, and you don't know what's going on.
And Pat, when she's running through the woods, is the only one who has the music on her. You know, whereas Susie doesn't, and that links in because that's basically the curse and the witchcraft is being focused on her. You know,
it does feel like a lot of the music is quite often when it is obviously a more supernatural elements are like really at play, is when you feel it a lot higher, or like you said, the witch music is a lot more there. Or even when you about like looking out upon, when she's looking out, she hears the music, but not when she's there. It's almost like this, when you enter this country, this city, when you actually go through those doors, like the second she goes out into the rain and the thunder and the music rises, this is you like entering, you're about to go into the supernatural world. You're about to go into this fantasy, this fairy tale,
because it feels like when you're in there are a few scenes outside of the Tanz Academy, like there's like a German bar, there's the airport, there's obviously Pat's friend's apartment, but most of those, whilst they do feature like some element of red, they don't have the same like fever dream feeling as the Tanz Academy. And when going to like the first kill or the first two kills, when there's a great kind of scare in it where Pat gets to her friend's house and we see the mirror, or no, we see the window, and there's like a coat hanging out or something, so it looks like the outline of the person, and like in the corner of your eye you see it, and then you're like, oh no, it's not a person. You kind of you get safe. She stares out, and we have like the music starting to build, and we see like the glowing eyes, and then it stops, and you're like, oh, she's safe, and then the hand breaks through, grabs her. And this is where I thought, okay, this is the first kill, and this is where it's gonna cut off. Where
I thought
she's
exactly
smashing her face against.
I thought, it's smashing through, and you were almost expecting her to be like impaled on the glass or something, and that was or to be thrown through, or taken through the window,
or even just crushed against and killed off.
It cuts off, doesn't it? At that point, so you think, okay, that was it. That was the death. You don't expect it to go on with the further. Yeah, I was very surprised when it almost goes back. It almost feels like it returned to a normality for a second when she's like lying on the ground, and obviously because it has this shadowy figure approaching with the knife and the stabbing, which I was like, I was just like, oh my god, like we've gone through. She's been attacked in the window, and now she's being brutally stabbed,
killed.
And it's like, holy shit, okay, like, and then you think, okay, so she's been brutally stabbed, so that's it. And then it drags her up to the...
And then she gets stabbed. So, she gets a couple of stabs.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that's like, that's a more intense opening kill than I expected. And then she gets stabbed in the heart. Yeah. And you're like, oh, fucking hell. Like, it's an actual... They obviously didn't stab her in the heart. But they use something that looks similar to it, like a pig's heart.
Because you flick back to like Susie and things like that, really screaming, knocking on the door, things like that. Like,
well, her mate,
and she's only just like met these like she's only just met like someone, and she's so like it's like straight away for her basically. As soon as she's arrived, shit is going down, which is really confusing. As soon as she's like in Germany, it's like shit's just gone straight hit the fan. But then you go back to Pat getting dragged up on top of the glass, which is such a cool shot.
Incredible.
The way she's like kind of dragged through like in this odd kind of supernatural slash, and you're still in this kind of, is this a slasher or is this a supernatural?
Yeah,
because there's
it's
a
weird
there,
one, isn't it?
but you've had glowing eyes and you've had weird stuff happen with the room and the lights and the colours, and you're like, are we getting a bit of both? What's going on here? And then she goes onto that and she gets her head smashed through the glass at the top, and you see her sticking through. It's like, okay. And then Susie's obviously coming in.
Well, it's not Susie, it's her.
It's not. Oh, it's
Pat's mate.
Pat's mate, yeah.
I don't know her name. Pat's mate.
Yeah. Who's coming in at the bottom?
Yeah,
like I said, and then you can just. But the shot is the bigger, wider one where you can just see Pat's head.
Yeah,
just
like
through hanging through. And even then, you still think it's going to be something like. That's it, she's dead there, or she's gonna, or again, like there's a shard of glass beside her. You almost think, is she gonna be completely finished off by like, onto it? But no, then it breaks.
Yeah, then it breaks and she gets fucking hung.
Yeah, hung there like
so brutal.
The cord. Yeah, it is. It's such a longed out death.
Yeah,
that you feel really bad for her, even though you don't know her.
No, it's brutal, man. And then, like, it's just fucking. It's really shocking. And then the glass shatters and kills Pat's mate.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is like 5 minutes
being
into
impaled,
the film.
the shard of glass, of course.
This is like 5 minutes into it, you know.
And two are dead.
And you're like, what the fuck has happened?
Yeah, it's so cool. That whole scene, I thought, that in fact, that might have been one of my, might have been my overall favourite kill of the film, but I know it's early, there are some other good ones.
There are.
But I really enjoyed it. I just thought all of that, it just played out, so it felt like it played with you.
Yeah.
Like the audio, it's playing with my expectations.
Definitely.
Not fiddling with me.
Yeah, it's fiddling with you. That's the Argento 4D experience. Yeah. He whacks you off whilst you watch.
Yeah, he whacks you off while he sets you on fire.
Yeah. The mixture of arousal.
You to feel, the mixture of arousal and also burning flesh.
Yeah.
Is his mix.
But it's such a good opening. And like I said, I'm familiar with like later Argento work where he is doing.
Well, this was seen as like his first foray into more of a supernatural.
That's what I mean.
Whereas before it was more of a horror thriller kind of a.
Well, before it was more Giallo.
Yeah.
Because he did Four Flies on a Velvet Suit. I think he did the bird with the crystal plumage, which gets paid like a little bit of tribute to later on. So the films that he did before were, like more Giallo, whereas this was like supernatural. So I was thinking,
more thriller slash, like killer kind of murder of women and all that kind of mix of stuff that happens.
So I was thinking, it's going to be like much more supernatural than it's going to be like. Oh, you just get you watch two women get brutally murdered in the first 5 minutes. And then we start to get to know the characters in the academy, Miss Tanner and all those, which has an interesting, because again, which is interesting because obviously part of that kind of that trait that you're used to, which isn't actually a lot of. I know at one point I thought that a lot of people mistake Giallo being the use of sound. Yeah.
Instead of the character traits of horror that are used within Italian cinema.
Yeah.
But the Giallo part has more been seen as a trait that comes with it. Not the Giallo part. The dubbing part is the part that's come. A lot of people relate that to Italian horror Giallo because of the way that they use, as I said before, different international casts are quite often used, but the Italian directors used it as a dubbing technique to, so that they could use them while having the same kind of voices or matching voices and things like that. Sometimes it was to kind of throw off an inconsistency, but the interesting one in this one is that not all of the voices are dubbed.
No,
for instance, like Miss Madame Blanc is just speaking. You can tell. Yeah, she's just speaking in her standard British. She meant German, but British kind of accent.
She's speaking English.
She's just speaking clear, and hers is perfect. So it kind of throws you off in that. Susie's pretty dubbed.
I think Susie isn't. Not in the English mix, I don't think.
No, she seemed the one I was watching. She seemed very like she was American. The accent that was Susan the protagonist, right? Yeah. So hers seemed off it.
Really, I thought it wasn't because I read that Argento was a bit like upset because in the Italian one, she was going to be done over. Whereas in the English one, the English mix, she isn't. So whether it's just, I don't know, whether it's because like the...
Well, the dubbing definitely wasn't perfectly aligned for her character on mine.
Maybe.
Whereas Mrs. Madame Blanc was like...
She was good. And the other one was pretty good. There's the German one and then the British one.
Yeah. They were fine. It was mainly those two that I noticed that were like, oh, you guys, your dub, you just seem perfectly sound, like the editing really perfect. Whereas it was like some of the other characters, I was like, you don't all match. And there was one character that was like, again, well, I always find one character that just doesn't match the sound. And trying to figure which one. I don't know if I think it was the blind piano guy.
Yeah, blind piano guy.
When he talked, it was
Daniel,
like
he doesn't fit.
Like, that does not match your voice at all.
No, it's often like the more side characters, because I noticed that just like jumping forward, the scene where they're all sleeping in the hall and they're talking about some boy. There is one woman who isn't actually like a big part in it. I think this is the only line she has, and she says, "Why don't you shut up? Some of us want to sleep." And it looks like her mouth doesn't even move, whereas the other guys are just like kind of like casually chatting. But I think the characters that we do get are like an interesting mix. It does seem that you're going to get a few more characters than you do, because you get you get the obviously you get Susie, you get the Romanian guy Pavlos, who they're basically like he don't worry about him, he's really ugly, but he only speaks Romanian, so don't worry about him. You get Sarah, you get
Olga.
You get Olga,
the one who she was meant to live in the apartment with, but then throws her out.
But then you don't really see Olga much after that.
I remembered hearing her when they were talking about that, because when she first comes into the locker room and she has to borrow the shoes, and the girl makes it odd, like, I'll give you them for 15 whatever, and she's like, oh, I just need them for today, and she's like, well, I guess so, but give them back. It's like, it's a proper like turn. It's like, what the fuck?
I've actually got a list of everyone who was dubbed. So Jessica Harper, who was Susie, wasn't. Sarah wasn't. Flavio Bucci, who was Daniel, actually wasn't. I know he was a big.
Is that dubbed though, as in terms of, because there's obviously they can still record their own lines, but in a lot of these films they record them separately from when it's done, which is why they seem out of place.
That's why.
So it can still be like Susie was still doing the voice. I just mean like. It matched her voice, unlike some of them. But what they do with some of them is they re-record the lines after they've done the film. Which is what makes them out of place. So sometimes it is the actual actors, but the dubbing can sometimes be when it's a different actor who takes over. Like in this one, whereas some of the recording editing on this one, it seems like they've used the original, the actual original sound has been used. Whereas in a lot of Italian horror, they normally don't have any.
No, they don't.
They have not.
They just
have
dub.
no sound, and then they dub everything. Whereas in this one, it seems like he has actually used sound recording at first when they were doing it. Then he's gone back and he's dubbed the actual actors. Whereas what some people would say dubbing is when they're dubbed with another completely different actor together, which is what a lot of like the Fulci ones is. Quite often completely different actors, like even from some of the main ones, he's gone like, we couldn't get them in to record again, so now we have to use a different actor to fill in the
to do their voice. Well, I'm guessing it was the maybe the second option where it's somebody else, because it says so. Mark is dubbed in English by a different actor. The Doctor is dubbed by a different actor. Olga is dubbed by a different actor. One of the professors dubbed by a different actor.
Sorry, I was just thinking.
Mark is the boy,
he's
one
the
boy
one that they seem like interested. Because he's the only handsome boy.
He's the only handsome boy. Yeah. The police inspector's dubbed. Argento is the narrator, and he was actually dubbed. They dubbed him himself. I mean, he probably did it in Italian anyway.
Yeah.
But we get introduced to like the main characters, and they all seem like kind of slightly eccentric, but they also all have that element that you do get in Italian horror of slight melodrama. Like Euro horror has an element of slightly over the top.
It is one element that makes it hard at times for like me watching them without having seen certain ones before, getting used to that kind of melody. There is a part of me, like I said before, like for me, the music and the colour and just the visuals in general really rise the film.
Yeah.
There is still with some of these Italian horror where I do sometimes feel like not the kills and stuff, but sometimes it feels like the story, like not a huge amount happens, or it feels a bit like soapy at times, or just because the dialogue is not I do sometimes feel like I love everything but the script.
I think that's kind of that's part of the it's either part of the charm. Like I really vibe with that, but so I can definitely see how some people would be like, actually it creates a bit of a disconnect because you have something that is kind of so violent, such as the opening kills, and then you kind of you pair it with with slight melodrama, and I think you either really get it or you kind of
it is. I think it is hard. That we had this conversation with New York Ripper one about Fulci, about like what we would deem as standard classical great filmmaking.
Yeah,
and I do think that's why I think Argento in all of the visuals and stuff like that I think is great. There's some great filmmaking here. Even more than I thought I saw with Fulci, kind of in a lot of ways. Definitely. There's much more of a vision and auteur style. It just still is getting used to that kind of fact of like, can I say a script where I think a lot of the dialogue at times is not great?
Yeah.
Can I still deem that as what I would say is great? But that doesn't come down to the filmmaking part of it. I think is the difference.
Yeah.
I think that comes down that comes down to sensibilities in different cultures.
That's it.
And a lot of different cultures in Italian, in French films I've seen, like each one has a different sensibility, things they love about certain things. Like if you watch, say, like France, their humour, they have very very what I would call cheesy, childish humour. They love the asterisks and
old school.
Really like what you would look at and go, they absolutely adore like the Charlie Chaplins and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that as well is good, but they also really love just really cheesy. And when you watch it from like our point of view, we're watching it going like, this is fucking terrible. This is awful. Like, but it's not your sensibility,
Exactly.
And with Italian, you have to kind of adapt to the fact that this is what Italian audiences enjoy in that style, or this is what they're used to. That's what Argento was raised on. These kind of style, this kind of, and the slight. And sometimes if their dialogue seems a bit like soapy or things like that, look at their culture, look at their TV, look at their films. It's all there.
Yeah,
it just is. So I think it just is coming from a British Empire.
Yes, the British Empire.
Because I was about to say American, but I was like, they were all British Empire once.
Yeah.
we owned you all once.
A long time ago. Well,
not us, but
it goes. I mean, last week we were talking about The Wicker Man, which, if you haven't, go check it out. We thought that would have been on Must See Horror, but it strangely wasn't.
Yeah.
But that that had its own certain quirks to it, like the soundtrack and the slow burn of it. That's not a very Hollywood thing. That's quite a British thing. You know? So you have to.
That one was specific, and as we said, because we're British, we could understand the if you were from somewhere else, you wouldn't really get. There's a lot of stuff in The Wicker Man that we mentioned last week that people would have been lost on, and this is why it's the same thing here. You've got to take it in that same culture.
You want to have a bit of it.
There is even in American kind of ones that is our standard. It's the most. They make the most films. They make the reason it's kind of easier for certain different cultures to immerse themselves into that is because America is a mix of so many different cultures.
Yeah,
you've kind of brought together so many different ones, but your basis British Empire. So we can get with your sensibilities quite easily because it's just a mix of the basics of different cultures, which is why I'd say some like British filmmaking when it's very British, like The Wicker Man or this very Italian Argento, you have to have an understanding of their sensibilities more, which I think is harder to adapt to than maybe a bit more of the really Western American kind of stuff.
Well, I mean,
we're Western too, but you know what I mean. Like,
to be honest, a good example of that, and I think like Hollywood obviously dominates
the Hollywood
now.
stuff. I don't mean in America as a whole. There is some really more deep stuff that would probably be like, oh, we don't really get that context. But definitely, yeah, you're right. The Hollywood.
But like Hollywood, I mean, Hollywood is such like a money machine now, and it's so accessible for a lot of things, like how they tell stories and stuff like that. But a good kind of comparison, at least I feel, for something like, you know, maybe for like The Wicker Man as being very British in its filmmaking, you know, Suspiria as very Italian, is stuff like Westerns, man. If you look at Westerns, they're very American in how they tell stories, the way in which they're shot, all of that. And that might have been like, you know, a starting point of how, you know, we eventually get to the Hollywood machine, you know.
Absolutely.
But I think, you know, you have to take some of that into it. Like I said, you know, you get some strange dubbing. I struggled with that when I first started watching Euro horror, but then eventually it was like a switch went off in my head, and I was like, actually, you know what? I'm on the wavelength now, and I get it. And ever since then, I've kind of loved it.
I didn't really have it, to be honest. After I've gotten used to a couple of them now, I didn't. With this one, I was like, that didn't really cause a problem for me. And I used to just hate dubbing in general. I couldn't stand it being out. It's not that it doesn't still occasionally like that. You know,
it's more obvious. Get me. It's something like New York.
More obvious. It was more obvious than that. And this one, obviously, because some of the voices just weren't dubbed. Didn't seem dubbed, or at least seemed like the original tracking. But it was easier for me to. The only sensibility is just getting used to the humour and the actual kind of the way that they do certain storytelling. Or
that's it, because it is a bit soapy.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So that's the only thing that is the only like thing that kind of holds me back from fully embracing certain ones. Is just like that part is like that feels like that doesn't match the amazing music visuals that you've kind of given me here at times. And that's the only thing. It just still feels a bit like inconsistent in parts.
I'm gonna have to do that.
But even
Clockwork Orange to you, just brainwash you into understanding.
But then again, as we know, like this film is even in the cut that I assume the same one you watched, it said about that this film was kind of parts of it were lost and had to be restored and kind of put back together, and you know there are parts, and even then I think there are still parts that they say are missing or haven't been completely. They say it's meant to be completely restored, but there are still parts they say are missing, or reasons certain parts of the film seem a little bit inconsistent, or they're missing something. Is because it literally is missing. They don't have that reel of the film. It was destroyed or damaged, or which is really interesting that this film had to be basically completely restored in certain scenes because it was such a like shithouse of how it was left and like spread around of the original cut of the film.
Well, I mean, we talk about weird stuff like that, and it reminds me of another must-see horror we did with Event Horizon, where we found out that the fucking reel of the film ended up in a salt mine in like Transylvania or something. Weird shit happens to films. It got destroyed because
it was left in a salt mine.
Yeah, some Transylvanian salt miner probably just found it and was like, what's that? It's Paul W.S. Anderson. I don't want to watch that. He just watched like all the Resident Evils and thought, nah, I'm going to leave that. Yeah. The maggot scene.
Yeah, when they're sitting down to the dinner and
that's fucking gross, man. I had this. I don't know what it is, but just maggots gross me out so much. I remember watching Ghost Ship when it first came out. One of the best openings ever, and in like the 2002 when it came out, it was the best thing ever. I remember like a few years ago, I was really high watching it, and I was like watching maybe half of it, and I was like, that's a decent. And then something switched in my brain, and I got terrified. I had to lie on the sofa, stop sitting in my chair because I was like, there's ghost behind me. And you know the classic thing of like, if there's a wall behind me, I'm safe. I need to see everything, and I was terrified, man. But
that paranoia comes with what you can see.
Yeah, but there was a scene in it where they find a whole bunch of food. Yeah. Carl Urban and somebody else start scranning it, and then they look down and it's turned into maggots. And that stuck with me so much.
I was going to say, we talked about that in our Valentine episode.
Yeah, because
he gets the maggots.
He eats the maggots. Chocolates. And I probably said then, every time I ate rice for like 5 years, I was disgusted by
Egg fried rice does
It
does look like mouldy maggot.
It does, man. And this film triggered that in me again. I was like, I was watching it, and then they find it rain down
from the ceiling, and they're in the bottom, they're all like screaming, and you see that, and they're on their skin. It almost looks like this. When I first saw the bit with the skin, it looked like they were coming out of their skin. Yeah. They were digging into them, or their skin was peeling. I was like, "What the fuck is that?" I was like, "Oh, it's the maggots coming down and coming through their hair." But I thought their skin was like peeling, or maggots were coming out of their skin. I was like, "Fucking hell!"
It's so gross, man.
Yeah, it's.
But that sets up another incredible moment, I think, where not only does it kind of like move the plot forward, because I wouldn't say that the movie's kind of thin on plot, because I think given the time, I think it's like an hour and 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
I think it's paced pretty well, but we kind of we get the really shocking opening, then we're introduced to most of the characters, and then
through the studio.
Then we have that kind of dance scene where Susie passes out, and then there's that does actually work really well, because the doctor comes. Sarah is like, "Well, the doctor came to visit you," which is kind of weird. And then we find out that they say she has to have like a glass of wine a day, eat plain foods, which obviously leads up to something.
Yeah.
And then the passing out also. This made me question whether Olga was in on it, because she passes out, and then Olga's moved all her stuff in, so that Susie now doesn't have anywhere else to stay other than the boarding house, because and the academy, because they say to her, "Oh, your room's ready. You can move in. Do you want to move in today?" And she's like, "No, I'm fine. I'll stay at Olga's." And then she passes out, and she has no choice. The choice is taken away.
And then she's thrown out of the. And then she's thrown out. She can't live there anymore. And it does make it makes it interesting. But then, we don't see Olga.
We don't see Olga anymore.
So it does make you question. In my head, I was thinking that Olga's been taken out. She can't live at the apartment anymore because Olga's dead.
Maybe, yeah.
That was what I was thinking. That's why Olga can't. She can't live there anymore, because she's told by another. She's not told specifically by Olga.
Maybe.
That's what made me think that Olga's been taken out by witches.
Maybe.
We don't know who that was at that point.
No, we don't.
We just think the killer, or whoever those floating eyes are.
But the scene in the hall after the maggots, because it's fucking bogging. They go upstairs, and then they're walking over the maggots.
When you get the woman in the room.
Where we kind of have these sheets behind them, and it's all kind of really well done. They're having a flirt with the boy, and then they fall asleep, and then we get the Suspiria theme again, as the Madam, what's her name?
Madam Blanc.
No, it's not Madam Blanc. It's
is it the Miss Tanner?
No, it's not Miss Tanner. It's I can't
think who it is.
Yeah, the name of the main witch is actually gone from me at the moment. Helena Marcos.
Yeah.
Mater Suspirium.
Yeah,
she comes in.
Suspirium, that's the one I was thinking of.
She kind of slips in behind them, and just lies on that bed and has that red hue again.
Yeah.
And one of the main things is every time there is a character from the coven who is evil, this red hue is with them, is behind them. Even if it's like they're stood in the hallway, the red hue's behind them.
We haven't seen her before, so
we haven't seen her yet.
But the only way we've seen is because they say she's out of town.
Yeah, she's out of town.
And I think you see a picture because but obviously she looks younger and more good, not how we see her later.
Yeah, and then you have that like raspy kind of like horrid breathing that she does.
Yeah, and then that's what gets Susie, isn't it? The horse heavy breathing.
Yeah, it's Sarah.
Oh, is it Sarah?
Yeah, because Sarah's is the one who
it's
says
really it's really weird. The breathing is really quite unsettling part
it's just
of it.
unsettling.
When they're all just like
well, everybody else is asleep.
Yeah, but what's going on with around her, and she's looking around at everyone like, what the hell? And you're hearing that, and then she obviously somewhat recognises, but it gets confused because they don't think she's there.
Yeah,
it's like, if you come back just to glow in the middle of the room.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't get. No, sorry, man, to cut you off.
No, I was. You go home. That I was about to go to the next thing, the next death that I remembered popping into my head,
which is Daniel.
Yeah. The
which is strange because he kind of just gets like.
Well, he gets fired because he's not doing the music to the tempo.
No, he gets fired because Albert, the weird little boy who's dressed like an old Victorian. He's got like the weird blonde.
Oh,
the dog apparently attacks him.
Yeah, that was it. I don't know why I was mixing it up with the scene, because there's a scene when she's telling him off about the fact that the tempo isn't right. And he's not getting it. I don't know why. I just thought that was when he got. But I forgot the story about the boy and the
But then she's like, the fucking your dog bit Albert, and it's clear that the dog didn't, because Albert's like a little fucking prick. Yeah, you see him like approaching the dog. He fucking slides his trousers down. Yeah, they want the. He doesn't actually slide his trousers down.
But no, they're all like, "Get red! You need to go. Rip, we need to get that dog rip."
Yeah, we need to rip that dog. Although that didn't make, because that isn't like, we see him at an umpire band. Yeah, and I was like, no hate to any of our blind listeners, but I was thinking like, isn't half of the fun of an umpire band like seeing them?
But I guess there's still a good bass. There's a good bass there.
Still a good song.
But yeah. To be fair, the character. I mean, if this is the way of the blind community, I can tell you that I can't say that the blind is very well represented by Daniel, because he seemed like a bit of a caricature / a bit of a joke character.
He is a little bit.
The way when he walks in, he just seems like a bit of a bumbling kind of character. And then his death comes out of kind of. He's just kind of there in the middle of like that. We get that big wide shot of him far away, and then kind of. We kind of zoom into him as he's there, and then you hear the noise. Yeah. And then the dog just goes from.
But it looks like it's flying at him.
Yeah, it does.
Like something's flying at him.
Yeah.
And it's beautifully shot. It looks awesome.
It does. That's what I was on about, that big like wide shot, because I was just like, oh, and then because you go from that to obviously the sound and noise like travelling, but then obviously the dog jumps up and just starts to freaking go for his neck.
And just gobbles him up.
And you see like a cutaway, obviously, where it's just like the dog's obviously just been given like a pile of meat or something. He's just picking up scraps of meat off the ground. But then you see a shot of the police or whoever coming towards, and the dog just there, and you go back to a wide shot of the dog legging it off. But it all plays out in that kind of quick kind of scene. But it is quite brutal. That it's like his own dog that turns on him.
But that is kind of like a. I've seen it in other Italian horror films. It is this dog turning on someone. It's kind of like, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it, but it's almost like that thing of man kind of exerting its control over nature and over like animals. And it ultimately, we can't control these forces, There's a scene in The Beyond, which is by Fulci, from his Gates of Hell trilogy, and it's a banging film. But what kind of happens in it is that there's another blind character with a dog, and the dog ends up turning on her, bites her throat out very similarly, and then in Fulci's in Argento's latest film, Dark Glasses, there's the main character is a blind woman. It's a blind woman and like an Asian boy that she looks after. It's like a weird it's like a weird see no evil, hear no evil, where like they're being pursued by a serial killer. It's a decent film. It's decent, and there's a scene in that where the dog kills someone, and that's kind of what I think it is. Like, I think it's Argento playing with that. Like,
I think it is that. But it's that the dog is the idea of this companion, this close. The idea that actually the dog is there to protect you. Massive. And for a blind person as well, that's even
very
more
reliable.
Because you're completely right. The dog is like your world.
Yeah.
The dog allows you to access the world. So then when it turns on you, it is a kind of a deep kind of, that's the most brutal kind of, that's the biggest betrayal
you
can have. It's like me turning around now and killing you.
It's you just biting me.
I am the deepest betrayal. I'm the only person that gives you access to the world outside.
You do. You keep me in a cage.
I give you access to Anna so that you're free. Yeah. But apart from that, I allow you to leave and go out and do things.
You do.
If I killed you now, it would be like putting you down like a dog.
Yeah, you've put like a small like chip in my heart that you can just press.
I only give
and
you
it just
that
blows
freedom.
It up. Yeah. Just at any will.
Any will. But that's why I make you believe I'm there to your protector.
But really,
not to just put you down at any point.
Really,
like,
you will kill me.
I think it's like when what is it? It's like in Justice League or so. Apparently, Batman has a way to kill all of the Justice League just because he's human, so he has a way out.
Oh, obviously.
So he has a way to know how to kill it. So he has that, even though they know he'll never use it. He's got to, I'll never use it, but you talk back to me one more time. It's like, God damn, Flash, you talk back to me one more time and I'll kill your little...
or
kill your scrawny ass.
Yeah, Martian Manny to like, you damn alien, step out of the line, I'll crush your damn head. How was he going to do to some of them?
I think he just knows they're kryptonite or whatever, so he can just be like, he's just like walking like down the room like, okay.
But Flash,
I don't know. He's got to be so quick. It's like, how do you get? I don't know. I'm sure he has a way to like trap him in a beam. I don't know. I don't know what all of them are. All I can really imagine in my head right now is him just being really like pissed off. Like, right, nobody tell Superman, but we need to take out Superman. And basically, he can probably already hear this conversation. So he's like, we need to just fix this. But what I'm going to do is, I've got some kryptonite. I'm not going to tell Superman. I'm just going to walk by slowly and I'm just going to shank him. It's just like that. Just walks by and just gives a couple of digs in the side. Yeah. Right, he's down. He's dying. Right, just slide this into his neck. Yeah. And Superman's gone. Right, the world's protected. And or he just walking in going, yeah, it turns out that Superman wasn't the bad guy. Fuck
this. Or he just, like, the Flash is playing up, so he just rings, like, the FBI hotline. Yes, sir, I have seen Ezra Miller. Send the police. Dude's gone off, man. He's gone raggo.
Dude's insane.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Suspiria.
Back to the classic.
Away from superhero killing.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, where we get, like, we get a scene in the swimming pool, which is, yet again, there's red everywhere.
That's how along with the water as well. It gives you. It's not just reds though. I feel like this one gives a reflection of colour. It felt like a rainbow of colours because you're getting the water's kind of giving off its own kind of colours. It's kind of changing the whole room. It just feels like a fever dream.
Yeah, but you get that really cool shot that's kind of above them as they're swimming.
Oh yeah.
And it's like the camera doesn't just suddenly cut in. It slowly goes over them. So they're like, somebody's watching them, man.
Yeah, like a... Is that the... Am I imagining... Is like the red kind of... It's the red colour, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's along this part of the ceiling, but it's kind of... Is it like a mist? Kind of like a cloudy kind of...
It's like a hue.
It looks like something over them. Kind of like a proper... I don't know why that was in question in my head, but I was thinking of a scene when it's like a kind of... It properly looks like this kind of cloudy aura over them. Kind of.
We see that red kind of hue.
You see it quite a lot, kind of thing. But this one I remembered looking more like a cloud kind of hanging over them of red, kind of.
Yeah. Maybe that's like the witch watching them. I more saw it as like somebody's actually like leaning over the balcony and listening in on this conversation, because that's when Sarah is saying like Pat had collected all these notes, about like. About what was going on,
what she was finding or seeing or hearing.
Yeah. And we get the conversation at that same time. She says like, "Oh, not only is Pat's notes gone, but we're tracking the footsteps. Everybody's asleep. The teachers are walking."
This is when you start to get a lot of for Sarah. You start to get a lot more of the like surrounding her. Like something is surrounding Sarah. Like she's getting close. Or obviously, the closer that anyone reveals anything to Susie, the more you know that you're next in danger. And obviously, this is Sarah's death.
Which is incredible, man.
Yeah, this one was. I was confused at first about what she were like, because obviously her being chased through and then falling into, like, this one felt like almost like a nightmare sequence.
It's very
like just going, like she's going from like different rooms, and when she falls into that room of razor wire, which at first I was just like, you're just in a room full of cables, come on woman, get yourself out. And I was like, oh wait, you're getting sliced up, okay, it's razor wire.
Yeah, well,
I was like, at first I was like, god damn woman, get yourself out the string.
It's just like the string, silly string.
Yeah, it's like, come on, get over yourself, you've got to keep moving, you've got to get out of here. And I was like, oh, you're getting this blood,
razor wire,
you're slicing her up.
Well, leading into the chase, we get Susie kind of starting to fall asleep, against her will, and then we get that kind of like sickly green light coming on. We get the witch music, and then we get, not only do we get like quite a cool chase through the house where you don't see anybody chasing her, but you feel like something's closing.
You feel like it's there, and again the light and the colours uses a good way, like the point of view camera kind of going towards her.
Yeah,
you've got the colours that are kind of changing, like you've got more than just the reds and stuff. You've got a whole range of like I remember purples and greens and all these different colours and you feel like it's chasing her as it moves her through, and it feels like it's pushing her at times. Like so it's literally like nipping at her heels.
That's it.
As she gets cornered into up in the attic.
It's in the attic.
It's at the top, isn't it? Because she goes from a height when she comes down into the razor.
But it's so good, just the way in which the camera makes it feel like she's getting closed in. Like all of the shots of her when she's running. There's a particularly great shot where she kind of leaves Susie's room. I think she runs down a hall, and then there's one where she's in, one of the walkways leading to a door, and the space just looks so small. Yeah. You see all of the rest of the walls around her, and where she is in is just a small corridor.
Yeah,
and then we get.
It really does feel like
it's closing in.
It's panning in, closing in. Getting there. One other thing I also like is when we talk about like the way it's moving as if there's something supernatural behind it, is the fact that it kind of tilts from side to side at points. But the tilting side to side doesn't make it. It actually makes it feel like you're kind of. I don't know why. It kind of reminds me of like something like if you're like digging into something, you kind of move it side to side to make it feel like you're like getting it smaller or closer or getting in there. Like you're literally like let's say screwing her out. Well, screwing her down, but you know what I mean, like it's like a nail kind of closing in on something. Yeah. Or like drilling in.
And there's there's this I don't know, that thought's gone. Like the Wicker Man, when you have a thought, you're like, this is what I want to talk about. It's back. There's something talking yet again about the idiosyncrasies of kind of Euro horror, all that. There's one thing that they do which yet again does feel very soap and feel very melodramatic, where in more like British or American films you get a lot more cuts, so it might be like a shot and then it might cut to somebody's hand on a door, and it will be separate frames. Whereas in Italian horror, instead of just having like a shot of somebody reaching out, a shot of their hand, they do a lot of panning and zooming in. Yeah. So it still feels like one shot, but it kind of, I think because it's not cutting around so much. Sometimes when you cut around, you can have like intensity, but oftentimes when it's panning, it makes things feel more drawn out.
Like in that shot, it does feel like a lot of like consistent. Like obviously it's not a one shot because it's broken up, because what they do tend to obviously cut into it with scenes of other characters. Cuts, quite a lot of them, most of these scenes have a bit where it cuts from like almost like something a little bit more subdued, like Susie doing something or someone else doing something while you cut back to them doing that. But when it's actually in the moment of like following them or going after them, it feels like this constant. You're right about this constant, like it's constantly flowing, panning towards them. It's constantly moving in on them. It's constantly making the space smaller or larger or whatever it's doing. It's coming from that distance. So that, I think you're right about that. That definitely makes it feel more intense.
Yeah.
And sometimes actually the cutting parts do actually make that feel as well, because it breaks you from a moment and then throws you back in.
Exactly.
Back and forth. I found this film had a lot of that. Like that.
Yeah.
It cut to something else and then came back to it. And then so you constantly feel like, and he's like, wait, I'm still in the middle of that, and now what's happening here with you, Susie? Or like, you know what I mean? Or Sarah's getting chased, and now we're focusing on something Susie's doing, or awake, or in her sleep, moving around.
Yeah.
Sleep. Just something as simple as that, like she's obviously having a nightmare or something, or a dream in her sleep, and then we're back to Sarah, who's actually having a real nightmare.
Yeah, and there's an amazing kind of scare that got me both times. And it's the classic that Argento did at the start of the film, where Sarah kind of runs and she goes up towards this kind of darkness, and you think, okay, she's safe, because the music stops.
Yeah.
And then suddenly a hand comes out with a razor and slashes Sarah, and the music just kicks back in, and then she runs into that room, and this has got to be one of like the fresher moments in my mind, or of horror moments that I've watched from films recently. This has been one of my favourites, and that's where Sarah locks herself in that room and starts to try and climb out, and you see the blade going through and just latching and trying to unlatch the door from the inside. It's so inventive, because you just hear it constantly, and it starts off as like slow, and then it's getting more and more as the latch is getting more off. Yeah, and then, like you
slicing
said,
the sound,
clicking. And then you get a great moment that I did not see coming at all, where she climbs out of the room and you think she's safe, and then she just lands in some fucking razor wire. It's so brutal. She's like writhing around.
Yeah, and again, that's all what gives that fever dream, like what's going on, like how has she gone through that window thinking she's getting outside when she's actually, and we know she's gone up, so you're thinking she's got through, or is she about to fall, or is she about to, but not suddenly just fall and drop like it did literally make me think of something more Nightmare on Elm Street kind of the
that's
way,
what I was thinking of, like that almost that,
which obviously this is prior to Nightmare on Elm Street, but
that fever dream, and that weird like that. It doesn't feel real.
Like I could totally see Craven was inspired by these kind of to help with kind of the colourful palette that you sometimes get in Nightmare on Elm Street.
You do get that kind of red hue when the boiler.
And I can see how that goes, because that one felt completely like a proper that felt like almost I would have believed if that was just a total nightmare sequence. If Sarah suddenly woke up and was like, oh shit, that was real. Yeah. If she woke up covered in like razor blade scars and stuff, I was like, there you go.
There you go. and like you said, it feels really surreal, because it just comes out of nowhere. You have that moment that Argento does great, where you think a character's safe. Like, okay, she's been chased. We've had the jump scare where she's been slashed. Okay, she's got into a room. Yeah. She's climbed out. She's escaped. She's got to be safe. Oh fuck! She's fallen into razor wire. What the fuck was that doing?
She
there?
Rivers and she's in pain. And she's trying to pull herself out, and she's getting sliced more and more.
And then we get the classic throat slit. Yeah, which looks awesome. It does. Yeah, so well done.
Cool. And then that's all followed to kind of move along a little bit with the. Like, Susie is investigating where she's kind of gone and what's happened to her, and everyone's telling her she just
gone, disappeared in the morning.
She's left, like she's left the school, and Susie
doesn't
doesn't quite believe that. And you've got the psychiatrist who starts trying to explain to her, who the psychiatrist was someone I actually recognised.
I don't think I recognised
what his name was. Is Udo Kier? He's quite known in horror circles in quite a lot of. He's in Blade. He's in Shadow the Vampire, Dracula 3000. He's in quite a few foreign, obviously, because he's German actor originally. He's been in loads.
He's probably one of those actors where I've seen him in stuff, but I haven't seen him young. Yeah, Ace Ventura, classic.
I felt like he was in one of Rob Zombie's Halloweens, to be honest.
No, he's in Blade. You're thinking he looks like the guy who plays the new Loomis.
He does look a bit like Martin McDowell, but
yeah.
I thought I could have sworn he was in something like that. I don't know. I'd have to look properly. It's full for. But anyway, Udo Kier.
Oh shit! He wasn't Halloween.
I thought he was
as Morgan Walker, though.
Yeah,
I don't remember that character.
He was. I'm sure he was in the hospital. He was part of the psychiatric team that was in there. I don't know why I remember that, but I did remember it popping into bed. Going, I'm sure he was in a Halloween film. But anyway, yeah. So he is quite known for quite a few of these, and obviously that makes sense because Halloween was just full of just millions of. Yeah. Rob Zombie's Halloweens were just full of millions of cameos of like random actors who'd appeared in different horror films over time. But yeah, it's just, to be honest, it was odd seeing him young because I'm used to always just seeing him as the older actor. So anyway, he just caught my eye because I was like, I recognise that guy. I was like, oh yeah, I know him out of quite a lot of. He is quite a classic horror actor now, quite well known for those, or in European kind of based films and stuff like that. So he's quite well known.
I mean, interestingly, he was in The Mother of Tears, which so Suspiria is
the Three Mothers.
Is the Three Mothers. So you have Suspiria, then you have Inferno, which I haven't seen, and then you have Mother of Tears, and he's in that as well, which is quite interesting.
Have you seen Mother of Tears?
No, I haven't seen Mother of Tears.
We will have to continue the Mother of
the Argento
the Three Mothers trilogy. To see, I do know that obviously this one is the best received.
That's what I've heard.
Because this one was like a breakout hit, wasn't it? It was. They didn't expect it to be a breakout hit. They released it in. It got an American release, which it wasn't originally going to get, but they kind of made a punt on it. Bought it after it had some interesting early, and it actually did. They literally thought that this was just going to be a small film, and then it actually kind of piqued people's interest at the cinema, and then that's why. I know the next one, Inferno, was actually made for one of his more actual budgeted films at the time with an American budgeting, because they made Inferno, but then but because of like changeovers, Inferno never got the release that Suspiria did because they didn't want to do it, so it ended up getting more of a mini release in like a few theatres, then just got put into video. So it never got the full release, so people never got to have that chance to see if actually Argento would have got more. If they'd actually been able to market it properly, Argento could have actually got more of an American, say, kind of different kind of. His path could have changed quite a bit though, because if Inferno had been, then more American would have gone, oh, make more films for us. Maybe it's a good thing that he got to stick more in his area and not get fully embraced by American like studios, because otherwise they would have started to go, keep making them because they're making money for us. Change your thing. Can we make an American film instead? There could have been a lot of films he never made because he started making Americans. And
maybe
a lot of directors go that. A lot of foreign directors nowadays, they get taken up, they get taken over. They get offered jobs in America. They take them on. Sometimes, they do great. Sometimes it fucks their career because they make an American film. And once you've made an American film and you've flopped one, it can affect you all around the world.
That's true.
A lot of directors have gone that way, so it is a sad kind of thing. So maybe it's for the best that it didn't, but that's why it was seen as a kind of a flop, because it was made on a bigger budget, but it didn't. They didn't give it the chance.
I do want to watch.
And then obviously the third one he only made recently. It's
2007.
That one was quite a long time after. Obviously, almost 30 odd years after.
It's quite some time. I know Dark Glasses was,
and that one's got his daughter in it.
Asia. I know Dark Glasses wasn't the best received, and I think like he did a film called Giallo with Adrian Brody in, and apparently like Adrian Brody was an absolute nightmare to work with. They had loads of arguments.
I've heard this been said a few times about Adrian Brody.
Like I think Adrian Brody didn't get paid for doing it or something, and Argento was like, I didn't pay you because like you didn't do any like promotional work for it. You just turned up, did it, were an asshole, and then like never spoke about the film. So I'm not gonna pay you your full like wage. I don't know, but
they have said there is there is a peak of Argento, and then there's a kind of which happens with a lot of directors.
Of course it does.
Not like some directors, Scorsese can keep pumping them out, and they're really consistently. Some have the peak period, and then they kind of start to John Carpenter's the same. He had a peak I love his stuff, but there is a kind of, you can't be saying Ghosts of Mars is the same.
I haven't seen Ghosts of Mars. Although I watched Vampires and people said that was shit, and I thought it was banging.
It was alright. It wasn't. I watched Vampires. It was okay. It's not peak Carpenter.
Oh no,
it wasn't assault on. And I think Argento has the same kind of peak area where this is great. Argento.
This is as he's hitting.
This is him still doing films that are enjoyable and but not to the same level, not to the masterful changing level that you got with Carpenter between the 70s and the early
mid 80s,
or late 80s, or like things like that. And that's what I mean. It's just that kind of we have that rise and flow of certain.
Well, I guess like things things change, don't they?
But then also it is also the case of, as I said, when you're in certain movie studios and systems, it's also the case of after they've taken a punt on trying to different films or different styles and it hasn't worked out for them, a lot of those that make the movies go, well, I'm not going to give you the same money anymore. And I know Argento's had the same thing as Carpenter, where it's kind of like you were at a peak, then you tried to make some different kind of films and they didn't match up to the other ones and they dropped, and then studios are like, well, you're past it, we've got new directors now.
We're not going to give you any
not going to give you the same, so they had to kind of do it their own way, and and that's a sad thing, because I would love to know what people like this or Carpenter would have got if they just kept going, make your vision.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting, man.
Because so many of their films now get looked back at and get more praise than they ever got back in their heyday.
Yeah.
And that's the same with both of them. There is a big, you mentioned at the start, Carpenter, and I do think the more I look at it, it's like these two actors,
they have a very similar.
They've got a very similar, completely different filmmakers in many ways, different continents, but they actually have a similar pattern, sadly, kind of seen as masters but never really appreciated at the time as much as they should have been. When you look back at their work and go, actually they did stuff that changed the genre.
I agree. But before I kind of butted in with something, you were going to mention about the Professor. I think you said that you saw.
Oh, I was just going to say the Professor's the kind of one that gives her the first link to the idea of witches.
Yeah, that's kind of where we get our first exposition.
Yeah.
Before that,
he kind of is there maybe to be exposition. To be honest, he's kind of only in one scene, and he's there to tell her about the witches, and he tells them about how they can be dragged down by
if you cut the head off a cobra, it dies.
If you get rid, so basically getting rid of the main will kind of kill, to help destruction of the coven kind of thing. So that is kind of our main exposition scene of everything.
And we find out about Helena Marcos, who was a Greek immigrant, and people linked her with witchcraft, and she set the school up as, I found it really funny because they were like, it was a dance studio and an occult theatre and occult studies place. It's almost like if you were like, I don't know, like, oh yeah, we're a florist, we're a floral school, and we also study occultism. It's just like two things that don't have any relation, you get one person who's like, I'm really interested in wedding planning, and one person who's like, what I love? IT. How can we make this one company?
Well, it's enough. Obviously, the supernatural plays quite a big bit in it. I don't know why. I did oddly expect to have more of the ballet stuff in. I expected it to be a bit more. I think the remake plays quite a lot into that kind of dance and the movement and the way that it plays in from what I've heard.
That's what I've heard.
So I was expecting this one maybe to have a little bit more. It feels like the ballet bit starts to go off after a while. I was expecting more long dance sequences in that kind of Black Swanny kind of that kind of thing, and we actually don't have that much.
No, we get
really. Apart from the early bit when she's dancing and the bit when the Daniel gets told off about the tempo and stuff like that. There's not actually that many dance. I expected the dance to play a bigger part in the kind of supernatural, that kind of the way that they'd show it in this big artistic way kind of thing playing into it. That was one part I was a bit like, I'm actually surprised that was so downplayed. It kind of felt like it felt more like just a way to set certain things up, and then after that, we're like, I don't need that anymore because we've introduced enough supernatural now that we'll get on with the supernatural part. Which is again why they say that I believe they've said the remake and the thing are completely different.
Well, yeah, I think the remake is like loosely based.
It's loosely based on the idea. It takes that part of it, but I think it takes the witches at coven. I think is part of it. I think the witches are part of it, and I think the dance is part of it. But that's about it.
I don't think the witches are part of it.
I might be wrong. It might not be witches. I'm sure there's there's definitely a supernatural part.
Yeah, I've heard that it's so loosely based.
I know that there's some awesome kind of death, like bone breaking kind of death kind of things in there. I don't know who or what character. I've just heard about. But I do know that Argento didn't like the remake for two reasons. The two reasons that makes Suspiria stand out to me.
Yeah, what's that?
That is, Argento didn't like. He felt that the color palette was dull and kind of boring. He said, which is what made Suspiria one of his favourite of his films. Is that
it is incredible.
It stands out visually.
Yeah.
Which again is one thing I was kind of like, if you're going to remake this film, I do feel like I do wish more of them would. It actually straight away with that one popped into my head straight away was what we said about Evil Dead Rise versus Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Evil Dead, because they said that obviously a lot of them follow the same kind of colour palette, and I could the witch at the end, the makeup, I was like, I could totally see that Sam Raimi was inspired by that to do the makeup for Evil Dead. But it's that kind of colour. It's when things are going off and going crazy. That's when in Evil Dead we've got those green hues and those colours and stuff like that. And it's the argument we made about Evil Dead Rise about the fact that it just felt a bit dull.
Yeah, a bit.
In comparison. Like all of the makeup and the colours and
visually
it felt toned down, which is... Yeah. But partially what made me love the colorization and the crazy visuals is what made me love the Evil Dead. And that's what I find is what sounds like the remake's done to this is it's got rid of that color, which might work well I think, but I will say I think I will be. I know I'm almost going in a bit disappointed with the idea that we're not going to have that, and also I know the music is the other thing was Argento said the music, the film doesn't have the music impact and it doesn't have that same, and it hasn't used, and he said like he feels that the music and the colour is what made Suspiria what it was.
I could agree. I think I agree.
And removing that element, he said, basically makes it not Suspiria. You know, and that's kind of what he said. So we'll have to review Suspiria the remake. Knowing it's a film that's nearly double the length of this film. It's like a long ass film. It's like 2.5 hours, I think. So we will come back to you with that one on our thoughts.
We will,
with a comparison when we get to it. But it was just interesting to think about those kind of.
No, I think it's worth
the thing that really stands out to me about Suspiria and what made it different is the way the music and the visuals and the colour, and that's what I really love about this. And it's just interesting to hear that something that was called a remake and it doesn't use any of that. It's like it sounds like just because they've done a supernatural horror in a dance studio, they've had to be like it's Suspiria.
I mean, I read that there was there was originally going to be planned a much more faithful remake, but then it got canned, and whoever came in, it was
David Gordon Green.
Yeah, that was it. David Gordon Green.
That
would be really interesting. That would be very interesting.
He helped with the script originally, to do, and his was much more closer to the original, or in the same vein as like where it had a kind of a bigger link to the original. And then when a new director came, it was the same director was involved, I believe.
Okay.
But then when he took over, he decided he wanted to go further away from it and take it in its own way. Which, to be fair,
I think is a good choice.
But I think that's the way that a lot of remakes should do. They're normally better when they go away. So it's not that I'm not going to like it in that way. It's just hard when you love the things you love about the original might be taken away.
Yeah, and I think because it's so distinct in its style, you know, that I don't think David Gordon Green could have done a good Suspiria film simply because
the way I've seen it from the trailers, the visual palette actually looks what I'd expected David Gordon to do, which is similar to like Halloween's coloration is what I would expect. And I do believe that actually. I believe there's a little cameo from Jessica Harper, the original Susie, in it. I don't know if that's just a face in the background or an actual scene.
We'll have to watch it, man. We will. But kind of going back to the film.
Let's get back into the original.
I strangely like that we get the exposition dump quite late. Because I think for a majority of the film, you're wondering what's going on.
I think and it's also that's embedded through Susie's character because she's new to this. She's almost getting her bearings, and she never really gets a chance to get her bearings.
Yeah.
So she never really gets to the point when it feels like she's fully really investigating, because she doesn't really have a clue what's going on.
No.
She's very confused. It's not until she starts to kind of get a level ground of like something's really wrong here, more connected through the Sarah character, because she hasn't really made huge connections to people yet.
No.
Sarah's the closest she gets there. So when everything weird's going on, she's almost thinking like this is normality, but because she's got to know Sarah a bit more, that's the kind of the thing that makes her go, this isn't right. This is really wrong.
That's why
I felt weird things, but maybe this is just Germany.
maybe it's just the Germans.
Maybe this is just what Germany's like.
Yeah.
There's floating colours and sounds, and there's weird eyes and
screaming. Yeah,
and maybe this is just this is what I heard about Germany. This is post-Nazi Germany.
Maybe this is just the way in which things are.
This is their normality. That's fine. I've got to adjust to it. Just like I said, I had to adjust to the Italianness of this film. She has to adjust to Germany.
This strange new world.
But when Sarah is gone and she starts to question it, and she realises they're lying, and obviously Madame Blanc's being very confrontational about certain things, and she's getting those little moments. That's when it starts to be okay. I need to understand this, and that's when she gets the doctor.
And I think it works really well because we are watching it going, like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
We're just as kind of
it does get to the point, I think, when you need you start to be like, I need a bit of context here.
Yeah, but then I think it comes
at the right time.
At the right time, because it is like, this is witches, and you're like, okay, now I think like I know who's in on it. Whereas before, I think if you were like, well, it's witches at the start.
The interesting thing is, I think if you came into this as a Argento fan before, but you'd seen it, if you saw his film in order of the way he made them, I think you would be at a point where, like, there's lots of colorization, there's lots of things like that, but because you're still seeing some kind of physical being at times, I think you'd still be questioning as to whether this is actually a slasher or is it supernatural. Yes, there's supernatural elements, you know that was it, but you could still say that a lot of that's like fever night dreams and stuff like that, not actual supernatural. And then you've got the slasher element. You could be saying that, like, the lifestyle that the ballet dancers take, and that is something played in a little bit, is that their lifestyle, the way that they have to live and dance and be healthy and stuff, is this causing them to be kind of in this kind of unusual trance? Is someone just going around killing them or doing things to them? Not so much the witches part. So when it's finally confirmed with the witches idea, you finally kind of, as an Argento fan, might be, we've delved into a supernatural film. We are no longer just in that Giallo kind of cinema. We're now actually doing supernatural with him.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think it's a breaking point in this film when it allows you to kind of see the film in a slightly different way from there on, being like, okay, witches. And all of this light and all of these effects now clearly make sense. I get this kind of weird fairy tale fever dream that we've made, and the colours make sense within that, with the witches and the colours that we're seeing, which are a lot of reds or greens. Again, in my head, just witches, that makes sense.
I think like, while some people might think, actually, you know what, maybe the exposition dump comes a little bit too late, I think it's quite well placed, you know.
I think it's okay, because I always feel like if an exposition dump is, it comes in the majority of films, and if it happens too soon in the film, I feel like then every conversation following that is just about that exposition.
Yeah,
which is it's a downplay for in a lot of films, especially films that have a mythology.
Yeah,
I find that if it gets to a certain point in the film and we kind of have someone explain that to us early, every conversation tends to link back to it somewhere, and it gets really boring. It gets really overplayed, or that's when, because they've already introduced some of the mythology, that's when they start to feel like they have to add extra stuff or expand it. And we've had this before, so it's one of the things that pisses me off with a lot of supernatural ones, is they go too far with it. They go on too long. I get to the point where I don't give a shit. Kill someone. Do something.
And kill someone.
Stop adding stuff on that you almost can't live up to the level that you're building this up to.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the fact that this is quite underplayed and there's not too much. Yes, we say witches and we have him talking about it, but it doesn't feel like it's overdone, and it doesn't feel like we spent the whole film having to put it into context. And I feel like Argento, the whole point is that he's not putting it into context. He wants you to feel unnerved and unsure and unaware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And if he'd done that 20 minutes earlier, half of the stuff he'd seen before wouldn't have worked as well.
No, because Sarah's death would have been like, well, we know it's witchcraft. We know she's being cursed. As opposed to like, what is going on? Like, what was Pat like looking into? What was so dangerous that they had to kill Pat so brutally, as opposed to, Pat was dealing with ghosts, dealing with witches. You know,
what was Sarah running from? Why did she go for a window and it turned into a like? How did that happen? Like, what are we dealing with here?
Yeah,
like, was there a room with razor wire, or is there a killer chasing them? Is there someone doing this? Is it someone in the academy, or is it something else out there? Like, you have no idea, and that's kind of what leads. That's what's enjoyable half the time about a lot of these kind of films is you don't know what's going on. That sense of unnerving unsuredness is like what makes you go, I'm into this. And it is a downplay fall in a lot of films that they feel like they have to over-explain.
Yeah.
Actually, we just talked about The Wicker Man, and actually that barely explains anything.
Which was incredible, man.
Which makes it good.
That conversation.
That has one scene where he reads a kind of book,
yeah.
and that was pretty much it. And that didn't feel like an exposition dump. There's conversations where they talk about it towards the end, and you have little details throughout. But it's so much better when it's spread out across a film instead of being like, we need to have several big scenes where they explain stuff throughout the film. That shows a filmmaker that's not confident in what they're doing, I think.
I think it trusts
a great filmmaker, trust the audience.
Trust the audience, and part of it is like trying to figure it out yourself almost. You know, trying to be like, okay, what's going on here? Like we said about The Wicker Man, which if you haven't checked out that episode, go check it out. It was a real fun conversation, and it's a banging film. But we were talking about, imagine watching that for the first time. Yeah. Not knowing the ending, which is incredible, but going in and trying to piece together what happened to Rowan, what happened, and what all of this stuff means. And I think that trust in the audience to find yourself through the film, not to just like, shit on a plate and be like, well, there it is, sometimes you might want that in some films.
Think, and that it links me back to my my Argento Fulci kind of difference, I think, between what makes a pretty great filmmaker and maybe not so strong in certain ways, not less enjoyable in their films, but in terms of their direction or their vision, is the fact that a great director can lay out the pieces and expect that the audience will figure it out.
Yeah.
And they'll get it. I think, say, something like The New York Ripper, a lot of that had a lot of scenes where they had to kind of talk about what was going on or explain, or someone had to basically the detective had to constantly be explaining almost what has just happened to you.
Or had to be explained to
you. Or someone else had to explain. And it just is, it's a lot of, and the great directors we mentioned before, whether they're those kind of directors, or whether it's Carpenter or even Scorsese, they just lay out the pieces and put the audience put it together. It's what has made them such long-lasting, well-loved is that they don't have these long, big scenes. It's like if John Carpenter, if The Thing, and you constantly had scenes where they're going, oh, well, I think that this, I saw it change into this form, so I think what it must be is this. So let's have a long scene where we all discuss about what it could be. No, they don't fucking do that. They just go, how can we get around? Like, how can we make sure we're human? But they don't have huge long scenes where they have to go on and on and on and on about every single event that's happened, because you've either seen it play out or you need to make your own inference about it, your own investigation about it. And that's what we've got here. He allows us to make our own investigation, our own assumptions about it.
Yeah, and that's what I'll give props to, Robert Eggers and Ari Aster and Jordan Peele. They are these directors who people do quite often shit on them for being, making these kind of, these films that they do, like the elevated horror, that kind of thing. Yeah. But what I respect about the films that they make is they don't really hold your hand. they let you, figure out what's going on, and they let you, use your fucking gumption to go like, this is what's going on.
Yeah, they take you through a journey on it, and quite often, even when you get towards the end of that journey, they're still not trying to spoon feed it to you.
Like the end, that's why the one of the great things about Midsummer is like, if this had been maybe like, like at the end of Halloween Ends, where they were like, this is like we've got his body into a like trash compactor, and then we're like, we have like a voiceover like, can evil ever really die? And it's like telling us something, whereas like the end of Midsummer, you're looking back and you're thinking of the the themes of it, but you have your own understanding. Like, some people think like, oh, well done, good to you, Danny, well done. Some people are like, no, she's a victim as well. Yeah. Some people think like, oh, yeah, good, I want to see Christian die. Some people are like, he was drugged, raped, and is now killed. And it doesn't then have like a thing where it's like,
you're putting your own feelings onto it, and each person can take it their own way, instead of it being so tightly knotted that it's like, no, there's only one way to see this.
Yeah, there's those variations, and like The Lighthouse, you can watch it and be like, you're trying to figure out.
You can see that in a million different. And that film doesn't try at all to explain any of it to you. It's just like, that's it, you're done.
Yeah, and I think that is like one of the great things, like you were saying. A truly great filmmaker can have that. They don't need to hold your hand through it. Yeah. And that's why when we get something like this, like an exposition of Helena Marcos was a witch who founded this place, and once you destroy the main witch, the coven will die. Then you start thinking, oh shit, okay, so I'm putting together who the pieces are. You've had all of the pieces, and now you're fitting the puzzle together. You're thinking, shit, the headmistress, that wheezy old bitch who was in the hall, that's got to be Helena Marcos, Yeah. And it fits.
Yeah, you start to be able to piece together the parts. She overhears them as she's obviously creeped inside, and Susie's in there. And she's now hearing it play out. But it's not a whole moment of where the head has, the leader has to explain everything that's just gone down and explain to you.
Yeah.
You start to be able to piece the puzzle together, because you're like, okay, so she's the head, there's Madame Blanc, there's like talking about that.
Yeah.
So we know that the leader, and there is the question like where you have to come to the conclusion, and then we're like, oh no, wait, it's not Madame Blanc who is the leader, it's the headmistress. And then and yes, it's fairly obvious, but I'm just saying, like, there isn't a long scene of them going, this is the head teacher, this is the, I've been here the whole time. And even when you see the Helena Marcos, or her, what's her master, Mater Suspirium, in her form, there's no long ass like, this is how everything's worked and things like that. It's more about, I'm going to kill you. It's at that point, even to the point of, like, if you listened earlier to that exposition earlier on, he's giving you the signpost of how she could affect him.
Yeah.
And she sees the, to kind of skip to the, like, that kind of, she kind of creeps through the corridor, but when she actually sees Mater Severum, she sees the line, the golden ring store around. And she knows what to do, because she's been told earlier in the film. But again, it's not like made very clear to you, because all you can see is their outlines. Like, you're thinking, okay, so she can at least kind of see where she is a little bit. But you had to kind of pay attention earlier to recognise where that's going to be. Yeah. Instead of it having to be like, I need to do this, or I've got some I can easily kill her because I know exactly where she is.
Yeah.
She just knows to aim for around about the right area and hoping for the best.
And there's another great bit where Susie finds out that she's being drugged.
Oh yeah,
which
yeah.
I clocked around the same time as Susie, because I was like,
when she starts taking the food.
Yeah, or she flushes like a whole fish down the toilet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna block that toilet.
My thing was more like, what the fuck is that drink? Because she pours it into the sink.
It looks like blood.
It looks like blood, but then whatever they used for it, it literally sticks like it's fucking washing up liquid. Like it's like she's having to pour it, and it's like breaking like it's oil. Like you know what I mean? Like it's like literally she's having to scrub it off like it's a layer of like jelly that's set or something. It's like I was like, I would have wanted to drink that anyway.
Yeah, that's the wine in Germany, man.
I was like, that's not no goddamn wine. Yeah, that's way too thick to be wine.
Yeah, it's like, and the whole kind of, the whole ending is awesome. The bit where she's like, I want to count the steps, and then she starts following it, and we get the two cooks who are doing something.
Yeah,
I got Anna in to translate because obviously they're speaking in Russian. And I was like, Anna, get out of bed and come and like translate this for me. And she was like, they said that they're talking. She like they don't really say. I thought they might be saying something of like actual importance to the plot or like scheming as witches do, but they literally say like, they're like talking about something, and then not of note either. And then Susie runs past. They say, who goes there? The one woman goes out and says, doesn't see anything, and then goes back. And this is weird because they say that everybody's gone to this ballet.
Yeah.
But then in Russian, they say what was going on or who was out there.
Yeah.
And the woman replies, it must have just been some fool running around or something along that.
Everything you just described to me just made me think of Metal Gear Solid.
It was
who goes there? Or like I just imagine like a big like exclamation or a question mark appearing above him, like oh, it's just some noise.
Yeah.
Well, who goes there?
Yeah. She hides behind it, knocks on it, and runs off. That'd be class, man. A Metal Gear Solid, but in Suspiria.
So Marcus is. The death of Moses stabbed through the neck obviously causes
with the plumage of the bird.
Yeah, the plumage of and Sarah's corpse obviously, which
that is awesome.
But when she does that, Sarah's corpse obviously appears out because the eyes are so weird. It looks like drawn on style eye, like on top
kind of.
It looks like a layer on top of eyes. It doesn't look like her eyes. It looks
they
like,
almost look glass-like.
Yeah, it looks like a glass layer put on top of it. So I was like, what is it? If they like drawn something and put it over her eyes, is that her eyes? Is that them? Yeah. Part of the ritual, the plumage, like everything that they're putting together.
Maybe.
Because she like comes out of.
Well, that bit terrified me, man, because there was obviously like. She finds the iris and the hidden way where the witches are going. They're like the carpeted room, that's why the footprints stop.
Yeah.
And then she goes in, she finds out that, they've got to sacrifice her that night, which is why they've sent everyone away, but they've kept her there. And then Albert sees her. Pavlo is like, I'm going to come get you. She goes into the room and the music cuts out again. Yeah. You hear the breathing, which is like starts to build that creepiness, and then she knocks something over, and you get that beautiful shot as it follows the balls, and they hit Helena's bed.
Yeah,
and then she's like, "Who goes there?" Obviously, she gets the plumage of the bird. That's the throwback because his directorial debut was. What was it? Bird or something of the crystal plumage. I could probably Google, but I'm not going to go with it. So I think that was like a nice little like nod he put in, and then she's like, "Hell waits for you behind that door," or "Hell's coming for you."
Yeah,
and then we get something.
The bird with the crystal plumage.
The bird with the crystal plumage. Yeah, that was it. And then we get a shot that was very reminiscent of like Nosferatu, where the door slowly opens and then like a hand comes out and then like pushes it open, and we see Sarah like reanimated and looking all like cut up and gross
coming towards her. And
then
she stabbed and then she disappears when the leader's gone, knowing that's been just knowing that curse has been like destroyed. That kind of what feels like the entrance to hell, because they talk about like hell or something like that. It looks like whatever's behind her has a kind of movement that's like its
weird
entrance to somewhere. But yeah, Sarah is like when whatever Mater is destroyed. She like basically like disappears, like bursts into something, and she's gone. And then that's when the whole of the place starts screaming into it, and that's when Susie starts to leg it, as we get a lot more colours and shaking and movements and what feels like things like breaking down, like the whole building was part of the, built into this kind of supernatural witches.
Whole created from
and it starts, we get fire and burning, and she escapes out, and we get the explosion of the window as she leaves.
Doors exploding,
as all of that, as she runs out into the rainstorm, and the thunderstorm, and the thing I found so interesting about the parallel from the start to the end. The start, she's out of her depth, she's moving to a new place, she is, you can tell she's anxious, she's worried, and then she's scared almost to come out into this big rainstorm, and she looks so uneasy, and you've got the music blaring and stuff like that, and at the end you've got this kind of different, you've got the music that's kind of blared because of the tension of that, but then it seems to kind of calm as you see her run out into the rain, and she's not scared
anymore.
She's happy, she's running in the middle of this rainy thunderstorm, and she's like freedom, like she's been released. Every tension that was there at the start of the film is now gone. Like whatever worry she had coming before she even came to Germany is gone. It's completely, it's like the storm is like a release, like a rebirth, like removed from all of this, like and taken that with, and I feel like a lot of that also comes with the ballet part of it is one part that plays into it. The regimes, the pressure, the tensity, the oddness that comes with that kind of whole thing seems to like almost play into the worry she had when she first needed to join this whole new thing, and that even that, not just the witches, but everything has kind of been released from her. She's been freed of that kind of horrible, like regime of a lifestyle has been resolved by killing these witches.
Stabbing one up.
But I liked that the fact that the two shot, the start and the end, is the same kind of shot.
Really similar,
of being and
wraps it up. And then like we said last week, we don't really get much of a resolution, But then I guess that might be.
We're just left with the burning that window burning. I was on about. That burning window is pretty much the last shot.
That's it. And I guess it probably goes to like nowadays. We want or we expect some kind of resolution, whereas films
more of a wrap up, more of a wrap up. What
does
Susie do afterwards, or when do the police arrive and the fire brigade, and is there a hint that one of the witches is cackling in the basement? We expect more of that extra tease, I think, instead of just being that's the story we wanted to tell. Done.
We expect like the post credit sequence of like Argento walking up to something.
When the dog returns, and tears Susie's throat out.
Or Argento walks up to the dog and it's like, I'm putting together a team. Like we kind of always expect these little cliffhangers or resolutions,
or extra details or just wrapping it like the person, like what does Susie do after? We get the tease that she's going back to America, or she's going somewhere else, or she goes to bang the doctor. I don't know.
She goes to bang the doctor, or even that it continues. She's fucking back in America, and in the mirror we see Susie, the eyes. Like that. Something.
Susie Banyan, witch hunter.
No,
but we expect it, and it all depends. To be fair, it all depends on the quality. There are some of them that at times I feel lazy for just stopping. It's like that doesn't wrap up the whole feeling of what. With this one, as I said, because it comes that nice full circle moment. I know the witches are pretty much dead. I don't really need to know officially. I don't need to see all of their burnt corpses and the whole building gone enough. Officially know it's over. So that comes to nice kind of a whole circle kind of like full circle kind of moment for me. I'm happy enough with the story where it ends there. When it's the burning, I'm happy with that burning witches screaming ending kind of thing. And I think some of them work really well. There are some of them in those 70s, 80s one where it stops and you're just like you still left. I feel like there was too much left on the table.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
With this one, as I said, because of the like melodramatic and the script and stuff, I do think at times maybe like the Susie character it's maybe not delved in enough that I have enough questions left to be like, I want to know where this is going next with Susie. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just mean, I wouldn't say that it's like a standout. She's like a standout character enough to me for me to be like, I want to know where you go next. I want to know more. I want to have the next story in Susie's story.
I think
and there's not enough left on the table for me to want that extra.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes in these films they build up quite a lot, or they build up characters, and then they just suddenly stop, and it's like, no, I actually wanted to know what happened. I told you the other day about a John Carpenter one I watched, which was not a horror. It was one of his forays out of horror, a sci-fi, Starman, with Jeff Bridges, where he plays as like aliens and that, and that has the same 80. It just like the Starman or whatever returns to his alien ship.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's all played up about the fact that he banged her. He
banged
her in order to give her a child because she's barren and she can't have children. And she was just giving them a child, and it sends off on the way. And I thought at one point was going to be like he's in the body of her husband who died, so he's taking his form by seeing pictures like an alien.
Yeah.
So all very odd. It's not a bad film, but the fact that just suddenly he goes off and literally it's left with her in the thing as it goes off. But the thing was, she's being chased by like FBI. She now has a child in her stomach. There's all of these questions that are coming. They're being chased by all of these things. The FBI want to talk to her, things like that. She's left in the middle of the desert. And all it ends on is just like, the light goes and it's like, and credits. It's like sometimes you can't just leave it at the credits. Great, the alien's gone home. What about the woman that's stranded in the desert, impregnated with alien baby of her husband, who's basically sounds like he's going to be a clone of her husband. So it's weird that her husband's like she's basically got a rebirth of her husband. It's like, so is she going to raise it or is she going to bang it?
It doesn't matter. The alien fucks. That's the main thing.
The FBI are going to arrive in a minute, and I'm just like, the problem is the human story here has been left now wide open. Like, there's so much. I would have liked an additional scene just to tell me, one, that she's just back to normality, what happens afterwards, and just give a tease of like the fact that she's pregnant with the baby and that there's a happy life. All it needed was one extra scene, but because it cuts off so suddenly to like, he's gone home, and the film was about the Starman. So it's like, well, no, the Starman was kind of delude of much emotion for most of the film, so I don't give a shit about him. I give a shit about the other character.
The film was called Starman, not Earth Woman.
Yeah.
The Starman came, the Starman fucked, he's gone. You don't care.
So I now need a sequel, Earth Woman.
Earth Woman.
To be that.
Earth Woman and Alien Baby.
So anyone who's seen that one is not this, but it's a fine film. It's okay. It was watchable. But it just was like, you can't just suddenly just leave some of these. But with these ones like that and the Wicker Man, like the ones we've looked at recently, they both come to kind of endings where I'm like, it leaves questions, but the right kind of questions.
Yeah,
like
it wraps up
questions that we don't need the answer to, otherwise it could dilute the film itself.
Yeah,
if I know more about the witches and stuff like that, it could dilute the film itself. If I know more about the island or like the produce, does it happen? Does it work? Doesn't matter, because these are questions that I should be left with. But I should be left about more questions about like the characters themselves and being like, oh, where are they, like, how do they get out of this? Wait, where they're stuck. There's too many. I shouldn't have real questions. I should have bigger questions left. I'm happy with the bigger Ari Aster, Robert Eggers kind of
what was going
existential questions.
Yeah.
But if it's about like a character I've followed the whole time and now I really don't know what's going to happen to them next night, I have no idea.
Yeah.
On a plot-based level, I shouldn't be left with those kind of ones. Like, okay, fuck me then, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter if I cared about this character the whole time. I don't get to know. I don't get to know if they get in safety or if they get banged up or the police arrive and beat her to shit death or whatever.
Beat her to shit death, yeah. It doesn't, that doesn't matter, man. Fuck them.
Not that was going to happen. But I just mean like...
the police just turn up and just beat her to death in the middle of the desert and they're just, alright, let's go. And they're like, we came here for the alien. Don't matter.
We wrapped that story.
Fuck me.
I don't know why. Oh yeah. We're recording late at night at this point, so I think our brains are going to go a bit crazy. But anyway, there are some that work, and there are many horror films which I could point out, but my mind's no longer getting enough to figure this list. But I think we've both seen horror films where it's just suddenly been like, oh right, they're dead, that's the end. It's like, you're like, no, what the fuck happened to the characters? Because there was a plot going alongside this plot, and it wasn't just about the creature.
Yeah.
The creature's dead, but what about the, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, man.
Sometimes you do just need that little moment, even if it's like Scream, where it's just a wrap-up of a news reporter telling you it just gives you a bit of a more, like, satisfying close.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of these literally is like, monster's dead. I think
some films need it, don't they?
Some films just need it. Yeah.
You know, like you know, we say that certain films should leave you questioning, going away, and then there are some films, like you said, that just need like a little. You know they just end really early, and it feels quite jarring to watch.
Yeah, sometimes some of them do the opposite, and they add an extra part on, and then you're just like, right, what the. New York Ripper, with the daughter at the end like that, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
like, what? Like, why? Why did there was already enough weird shit going on. I don't need to now feel this weird emotional added ending.
Yeah,
like you should that one just end it with him dead.
Yeah, it's so weird, man.
Yeah, it's so weird. So yeah, it all depends about the context of the film and whether you're the kind of film and whether the director's good enough to kind of leave you enough that you're kind of happy and content with what you got. Sometimes I just feel you're not always happy and content.
No, man.
Anyway, so my first Argento, I did enjoy it. It was good. You know, I had a few little nitty picky things, but overall, I thought it was definitely a very well made film. It's a gorgeous looking horror film.
Beautiful, man. I'm gonna ask you the main question though, man. Do you think it's must see horror?
Yeah,
you know, that's what we're here to do.
You know, some of these come along and express it, and because I'd never seen one before, I would have questioned before coming into this. I was like, is it an overhyped? And there are some of these, and I do think they'll pop up occasionally where, for me personally, it'll be, I think it's a bit overhyped for what it is. Like, it'll be a classic, but that's not the case. I don't think that's the case with this one. I do have some, little nitpicky things about, plot or script or things like that, which I just find it hard to get past a little bit. But I think in terms of what he does for horror and making a horror film look so bright and colourful, and the music and the tension and just the general shots as a filmmaker, I think that these are things that you should see as a horror lover. You need to see different you need to see a range, and I do think like us starting this, you need to get out of that American film, Hollywood kind of film of horror, or the safety net almost.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And these are coming out of it a little bit into classic horrors that are going to make you be like, oh, that doesn't feel natural, that doesn't feel normal. And I think to say that you're a must-see horror needs to have a range of dishes.
Yeah, you got it.
And a range of cultural stews.
Yeah,
and this one, absolutely. I think everyone should watch Suspiria for that same reason, even if it's just to get that one dip into an Argento kind of different kind of filmmaking. I think you should have that go, and I think it's a strong enough film and a well-made film that deserves to have eyeballs on it. Yeah,
well, I mean, I mostly agree. I mean, I am a massive fan of Euro horror. I've said it before. People who listen will probably know that. I loved this film, man. I went into it I was a big Argento fan before, but I didn't really know what to expect, and I think it went over my expectations. It was a lot more brutal than I thought it would be.
Definitely,
it was genuinely had some terrifying moments. In terms of shots and how it looks, it is incredible. I would say that if it's not one of the best 70s horror films, it's probably the best looking 70s horror film. It's absolutely impeccably shot, and just looking, it's a treat to look at. I think this, of the must-see horrors that we've covered, I think this is my favourite, and I think it'll crack the top 25, 20, could potentially crack the top 10. We will. I mean, maybe once we've done all of them, we'll do a top 10, just to kind of push ourselves even further.
When we're about 50 years old.
When we're about 50 years old, yeah. But no, I loved it, man. I think it's must-see horror. I think people should watch it. I think if you're also looking to get into other kinds of horror, you're looking to it broaden your palette, try a couple of other dishes.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is a good starting point for stuff like that. In terms of like the problems that you had in terms of some of the script writing, or the plot or that kind of stuff, I'm a big. I like the melodrama. I like the charm of it. So for me, that's not a negative. I actually really like that. I didn't have anything on the social media lounge this time, but I guess just to wrap up, if you've enjoyed this episode, then please hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. If you mention that we will beat you shit dead, then we'll give you a shout out the next episode. If you put that in your review, I just can't believe that just made me laugh so much. We'll beat you to shit death. And yeah, come and let us know what you thought on Suspiria, and if you think that it's must-see horror, you can find us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at CMTH Podcast, and we will see you next week. Ta-ra! Goodbye.